and it's Damascus, more than any other Arab city, that's been the center of Arab nationalism.
The Syrian crisis of 1957. All right, let's go. So, the Syrian crisis of 1957 was a period of severe diplomatic confrontations during the Cold War that involved Syria and the Soviet Union on one hand, and the United States and its allies, including Turkey and the Baghdad Pact, on the other. And the Baghdad Pact, might do a video on it later this week, but basically, Middle Eastern NATO, especially with princely states in this time. But let's go. The tension began on the 18th of August when the Syrian government, presided by Sheikh al-Kuwaiti, made a series of provocative institutional changes, such as the appointment of Colonel Afwa al-Bazari as the chief of staff of the Syrian army, who was alleged by Western governments to be a Soviet sympathizer or simp. Suspicions that a communist takeover had occurred in Damascus grew larger, prompting neighboring Iraq, Jordan, and Lebanon to consider supporting an Arab or even a Western military intervention to overthrow the Syrian government. Turkey was the only country to step in by deploying thousands of troops along the Syrian-Turkish border, especially to protect their sultan that's still buried in Syria to this day. Nikita Khrushchev threatened that he would launch missiles at Turkey if it attacked Syria, while the United States said that it could attack the Soviet Union in response to an assault on Turkey. The crisis ended in late November when Turkey agreed to cease its border operations following pressure by the United States, and when Khrushchev made an unexpected visit to the Turkish embassy in Moscow. The events are widely seen as a major failure for the Eisenhower Doctrine, which stressed that the United States could intervene militarily on behalf of any and of a Middle Eastern ally to fight international communism. That's one of the core tenets. Alright, now I'm going to paraphrase here, and we're going to go back over the events quickly, but I'm paraphrasing here, I swear. Time approaching, if not already arrived. Time approaching, if indeed not already arrived, when Syria will cease to be effectively an independent nation, but will have been taken over as with Czechoslovakia in 1948, and made into a Soviet satellite, having independence in name and not in substance. We also are convinced that once present groups are in control of Damascus, has consolidated its position in Syria, it will reach out in efforts to subvert surrounding countries, thus propagating the communist virus, and paving way for control by elements subservient to Moscow. Telegram from the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia to the State Department, 1957. Or the telegram from the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia to the U.S. State Department of 1957, just in case the 50s voice was more annoying and ineligible than regular voice. But the crisis began in mid-August when the Syrian government made a series of important and provocative moves and changes, furthering the idea that communists were in control of Damascus. Such changes including the replacement of Tawfiq Nazim al-Din by Colonel Afwa al-Bazari as the chief of staff of the Syrian army. The latter was suspected by Western governments of being a pro-Soviet fellow traveler or simp. This came 4 days after Syria expelled 3 American diplomats who were accused by the Damascus and the Syrian government of plotting to overthrow the government. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, Special Envoy to the Middle East, James P. Richards, warned about moving too fast and believed that the tension could change character and ease off in a few days or weeks. Following Anglo-American talks in response to the incident, U.S. Secretary of State John Foster Dulles described the situation as totally unacceptable and called for further efforts to prevent Syria from becoming a Soviet satellite. He had hoped, however, that a violent response to the developments would be prevented, especially by Israel. On the 21st of August, as advised by Dulles, Eisenhower made unclear statements on the events during a press conference for Syria, without alleging that the Syrian government was communist controlled. Syria responded with another press conference 2 days later, stating that Damascus was committed to positive neutralism, a foreign policy doctrine that stressed independence from the parentialism of the Cold War superpowers. So not really non-aligned, more of playing the two sides at the same time to get the most benefit. Now, By the end of August, both Washington and London were convinced that Syria was no longer in the Northern camp, and that something had to be done in order to prevent the subverting of neighboring countries from communism. In a letter to those on the 20th of August, British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan described Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev as a more dangerous man than even Stalin, and further stressed the importance of taking action so that neighboring Lebanon, Jordan, and eventually Iraq did not fall under the Soviet sphere of influence. But funnily enough, all of these countries, even Jordan, would actually take a good few weapons from the USSR. But the same day, British Ambassador to Jordan, Sir Charles Johnston, said that the Jordanian government was aware of anti-government cells within Syria that it could consider arming, but it gave up on the idea and decided to wait for further developments. Because Syria already has a brutal civil war. Imagine another one. Oh my gosh. At the end of the month, Eisenhower sent Lloyd W. Henderson as a special envoy to the Middle East, who was to work out his situation to the crisis by consulting different governments involving all except the Syrian government. Because they'll come and complain and talk about Syria's rights and sovereignty and how they're not actually communists and yada 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 and coup attempts and blah blah blah. You know, countries tend to do that. You know, that's why in the Munich Agreement they left out Czechoslovakia, because they might have done the same thing. You know, and appeasement would have never worked. And we then again we got World War II. Damn. So on the 2nd of September, Secretary Doe said during a press conference in Washington that all of the countries bordering Syria were of the opinion that Syria would become a communist state if nothing had been done and nothing was to be done within the next 60 days. This came after Henderson delivered Eisenhower a report from his visit in the Middle East. It also followed a series of important diplomatic exchanges between officials from different countries, during which it was revealed that Israel was willing to take military action, unless other countries neighboring Syria decided to seal off the country, which was discussed in the beginning of September during a meeting in Ankara between Turkish Prime Minister Aydin Mercedes, Iraqi Crown Prince Abd al-Al, and the American ambassador to Turkey, John Doe. Israel was eventually pressured by the West to show some restraint and not to react. Abd al-Il was cautious, as he wanted to consult Jordan first before making any moves. A penetration of Syrian territory through Jordan appeared much like an easier plan to him than through the Iraqi-Syrian border. Turkey, however, was willing to adopt military measures, since it viewed the situation as a matter of its national security. And with that, the Syrian crisis was ended when Nikita Khrushchev gave Mercedes a hug. But with that being said, I hope you enjoy, I hope you learned something, I hope it was entertaining. Anyway, with that... Ooh, I need to get some water. With that being said, yeah. Today, this is tomorrow's video. And Wednesday, we'll get back to doing 2, so we can have one for the day after. Because it's back to 2 days of work now, so that kind of blew, that didn't really blew my cool, because it wasn't like a thing that I was doing for like 1, 2, 3, then stop all of a sudden. Now I have to like scramble to get stuff to do. It was like 1 week, but that 1 week kind of blew me off, because I was like, oh man, I gotta think about stuff to do. But with that being said, yeah, back to the regular scheduled program. And with that, I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time. This has been another exciting episode of What Will I Read on Wikipedia Next. I hope you enjoy, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time. Sanitize, wash your hands, and as always, learn something.
Well, that was pretty good. So anyway,
yeah,
ladies,
of course,
gentlemen,
if you're a
and
nation,
MB.
always
Ladies,
be at the peace
gentlemen,
conference
and
table, no
okay,
matter
so
what.
I kind of got it down, but
this
is just more of a test recording and something to really put out there. I want to thank again. I want to thank everybody again for their support and their kind wishes, and of course watching the videos as they go up week after week.
So basically, I just wanted to say
different,
how interesting history actually aligns itself with, because history is not really a vacuum. As you can see, during the Syrian crisis, it actually gave, and this is in 1957.
Anyway,
so really keep that in mind. So basically, what I really want to say is that history is not really like this event by event thing. It's events leading up to a much bigger event. Because as you can see, this was pretty much the catalyst for the Cuban Missile Crisis. Because Turkey was kind of like, okay, the Soviets could attack me at any time.
So from here on out,
I do have to see when ballistic missiles were put into Turkey, but I do believe the earliest was 1958 and 1959.
I think I've only done one remake thus far. That was the Syrian one.
And there's also the appeasement doesn't.
We'll start remaking from
appeasement
next week.
Joke was funny.
This
but,
week could be totally original content.
There's also another
have
thing
not done.
As well.
And that's how from there. I think after that,
I think the last time I said it was the destabilization of the Middle East,
but it's close though. It's
by
close.
proxy country, by proxy stuff like this.
It's close. Trust me. I'm not in denial. I'm not in denial. They have to call me back.
But yeah, the Cuban Missile Crisis for sure.
They have to call me back.
And I can't remember the other point that I had.
With that being said, thank you again for your kind support, your kind words, and your kind generosity of watching my cringe week after
week. I'm gonna be honest.
Wondering if I'll ever sound interesting. But with that being said,
I'm not gonna.
Thank you again.
I do believe,
yeah, I think that's about it from me. I'm gonna watch some World War II with Indian Idol. Yep,
there was another thing as well. I think it was.
I want to say my inspiration, but probably in the early days.
I forgot,
for sure.
But, for sure, the Cuban Missile Crisis
still one of
was
the top tier YouTubers I look up to.
With that being said, there was something else too. I remember.
We'll probably do like a Q&A and stuff, but this is just like a little test.
Well,
just a little something to gauge everybody's thing with.
Well,
I'm gonna have a schedule.
I can't remember right now. I'm gonna be honest with you. But with further ado, thank you for watching again. Thank you for learning something.
America.
Future me out and enjoy this because I think I have like 3 minutes of footage. So, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed. Sorry for the little preamble, but pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. How little crisis that is probably not even known in the West probably created the Armageddon of 1962. So. With that being said, and of course, U.S. interventionism in the Middle East as well, but I don't think that was a solid point, but I do believe that was one of the points. But anyway, with that being said, learn something, of course,
God
and see you in the future, which is tomorrow, again.
Allah, yes. Allah Hakmik, Allah Hakmik. Anyway, with that being said, yes, the Middle East this week. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you have your goggles on, and I hope you're ready for a coup every 2 days. Because it's the Middle East, baby. Learn something.